I'm telling him, I really want you to just airbrush all these seams. And his face kind of went, okay.
Are you sure?
And then joked and I said, like, don't screw it up,
No pressure.
So it was a very subtle process, and he did such a beautiful, beautiful job on it.
Welcome to the Art of Costume podcast. I am Spencer Williams. Hey everyone, welcome. So Elizabeth is not here today. We had a little bit of a schedule mix up, so Elizabeth sends her best wishes and well regards to everyone. But because Elizabeth's not here, I sent a quick 911 text for a special guest host. So everyone, welcome back to the podcast, Lexi Silverstein.
I'm so happy to be back and talking about my favorite thing ever, the Hunger Games.
Hey Lexi, welcome back. It's been a while. I haven't seen you in a hot minute.
I know. I'm so glad that we could, see each other at least on Zoom to talk about good things like costumes.
Yeah. Where have you been? You've been traveling the world. You've been out and about lately.
I don't even remember. I went to London and Paris for Fashion Week.
Okay.
I don't know what else I've done. I traveled across the country. I drove across the country on a 4-day trip. That was very fun. I did a little thrifting across the country, which is my also other favorite thing ever. So that was a lot of fun. And then I'm going to Ohio for Thanksgiving. So that's the least entertaining thing of it all. But I'll see my family, and that's exciting.
The mystical land of Ohio.
Ohio.
I am going to Disneyland on Thanksgiving, and I recognize that's either a very good idea or a very bad idea. I think that's yet to be seen.
I feel like it'll be good. I don't know. I think that it could be. I don't know. It's not usually my first thought, let's go to Disneyland on Thanksgiving. So maybe that's other people's also not first thoughts.
That's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping no one shows up, but I don't know. We'll see. I'll let everyone know. Well, this is an exciting episode because we are here to talk about the brand new film that literally just came out. So for those of you who are like, I didn't see it, we're not going to get into many spoilers. We're talking about The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. And I happened to see Lexi post about it, that she saw it. And I was like, all right, I'm calling Lexi. I need her help. It was so good. I loved it.
Listen, I rewatch. It's a known thing. I talk about it all the time, but I rewatch all of the Hunger Games every month. It's my nerd. I
did not know this.
Yes, I have to. It's my favorite thing ever. And so everyone's been talking about how they were either a Barbie girl or they were a Priscilla movie girl. And I was like, no, I am a Hunger Games girl. This is 9-year-old me, living out her best dreams ever. So I immediately got tickets for the day before the official release, and I forced my boyfriend to come with me, and I left, and I was like, listen, I was already really on my hyperfixation of Hunger Games because I was reading the book too, but I'm now I will never shut up about it, so prepared.
I'm very excited, especially me, because I actually saw the film 2 months ago. So I've just been sitting patiently waiting to see how everyone's going to react to it. Are they going to love it? Are they going to hate it? You don't know with these types of fandoms,
It was so good though. And I could get into so much about it, but they really killed it. And they kept it really true to the book, but sometimes book to movie adaptations are not it. They killed it.
Yeah. Well, before we say too much, we have an exciting episode, so let's just get all into it. But first, I would love to start if Lexi, perhaps you will read our summary this week.
Oh my God, so much pressure, guys. I totally will though. So, ready. Years before he becomes the tyrannical president of Panem, 18-year-old Coriolanus Snow remains the last hope for his fading lineage. With the 10th annual Hunger Games fast approaching, the young Snow becomes alarmed when he's assigned to mentor Lucy Gray Baird from District 12. Uniting their instincts for showmanship and political savvy, they race against time to ultimately reveal who's a songbird and who's a snake.
That was a great summary, Lexi. Well done.
I wrote it myself.
No, she did not.
That's a lie.
Now let's dive behind the costumes. A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes was directed by Francis Lawrence, and the costumes were designed by one of my favorites. This designer is literally responsible for me getting into costume design all these years ago. We have costume designer Trish Summerville. You will know Trish from some of her most incredible work, starting with The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, Ray Donovan, Gone Girl, for which she was nominated for a Costume Designers Guild Award, Westworld, for which she was nominated for Costume Designers Guild Award. I love Westworld. The Dark Tower, Red Sparrow, for which she was nominated for another Costume Designers Guild Award, C with Jason Momoa, Mank, for which she was nominated for another Costume Designers Guild Award, and she was nominated for an Oscar nomination for Mank, which was super dope. And recently she did Slumberland as well. And for all of those that don't know, this is not Trish Summerville's first stint in the Hunger Games universe, as she did the costumes for Hunger Games Catching Fire back in the day, and she was not only nominated for Costume Designers Guild Award, she won that year. So Trish Summerville, she is the GOAT. I love her. We got to know each other. Yeah, when I moved to Los Angeles, and I just started working in, back then, the FITA Museum. She was the first costume designer I ever met, and I was just like, she's so dope. And that began my journey to costume design. So everyone just send some thanks to Trish Summerville. Lexi, I'm so excited to get into this episode. But before we do that, we have a special treat as well.
Woo! I'm so excited. What's the treat?
Trish Summerville is actually here. So we have a little interview coming up. So we're going to take a little break, and when we come back, I'm going to talk to Trish all about these costumes. And after that interview, Lexi's going to come back, and we're going to talk about our favorite costumes and probably some other stuff from the film. So get ready for that.
That's what we're going to talk about.
Hunter Schafer.
There we go.
See you all after the break.
Bye.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. I am so excited to introduce my friend, someone who I've been wanting to interview for years now, Trish Summerville. Hey, Trish.
Hi, nice to see you again.
I know, so excited. Short story, when I moved to Los Angeles in 2013, my first job was at the FITA Museum. I wasn't in costume design, but my job was to walk costume designers to their costumes. And Trish was the first costume designer I ever met, and it was for your work on Catching Fire. So it's a full circle moment.
I didn't know it was your first attendee.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Everyone's like, take this lady to her costumes. I was like, okay.
And I said, who are you calling a lady?
So yeah, it's a full circle moment. I'm so excited to be here with you and to talk about the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Such a exciting film. It was crazy and I loved it.
Oh, good. I'm glad you got to see it so we can really talk about it.
Yeah. Well, let's get into it. With that, the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. It's been a long while since Catching Fire, which you also designed the costumes for. So what was it like to return back to the world of Panem?
It was exciting and interesting. It was nice to, be back in the world with Francis Lawrence and this is some of the team from the other films, but all new characters and all new actors. So that was interesting. And interesting to go into an approach of, we have these 4 films that were kind of back-to-back films. And though I just did Catching Fire, the fan base got to have all 4 that were kind of that were the same time frame. And then the film we're doing now is, jumps 65 years backwards to when Snow was only 18 years of age. So really it was nice to have that opportunity to present a completely different world and a completely different view and all new characters as to how we got to, the first Hunger Games and the other 3 films.
Right. And you get to kind of set a whole different tone, which is what I'm really excited to talk about. The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, like you said, takes place about 64, 65 years ago. And the Capitol, kind of looks the same. It's still very sophisticated, beautiful, but also has like an eeriness to it. And it's almost like this was a Hunger Games period piece in a way, I would say. It kind of felt like we're kind of looking back at what, 60 years looks like, that difference in the world of Panem. So what was it like designing these costumes? I'm kind of thinking back on maybe where the costumes kind of evolved through the years, because, it's a little bit more, it's still very sophisticated, but maybe not as colorful. The silhouettes are a little bit different. So how did you wrap your mind around that?
So just really working early on with Francis and about what we were wanting the world to look like, and working with the production designer about, what the locations look like, what colors we were working with. And like you said, there's a lot of these locations, hard to believe, really do exist in various parts of Germany where we shot. That were really, really incredible. These massive statues and these incredible buildings and parts of the academy. So looking at those, I was able to see those those photographs from location scouts. So knowing that I had the liberty to work with color, because I wouldn't be competing with the sets and the background, and wanting it to have this post-war feeling, because this comes right off the heels of the rebellion. We're only into the 10th Hunger Games, which are run very differently from what we know much later with Katniss. So trying to keep a feel of like this American 1940s to 1950s feel to it. And that transpired over from, what we see in the Capitol to what we see in District 12. And so having it be more of that period feel and keeping it, kind of tonal in certain ways, like with the Capitol, seeing all the gray and all the stone and cold kind of colors of the environment, I really wanted to use red on the school uniforms. And, I do like this idea of the red, all the students flowing in. It's like, a vein of a blood flow flowing in to these buildings. And they stand out in high contrast to what their environments are. And even doing that with Dr. Gaul in her lab, keeping her in these reds and whites in that stark environment. And then with the Capitol citizens, trying to keep all their clothing in solid colors and not having a lot of print, so that it came across as a bit more serious, a bit more cold, even though I have a color palette working there. It's a bit muted color palettes. And then when you get to the district, I wanted to show, because in this film, we have the opportunity to see District 12 and the people and their lives outside of what the Capitol thinks of them and how the Capitol perceives them. So I did want to show this sense of community, this camaraderie with the singing and the dancing and just having actually joy in their lives.
Right.
And this all comes before all these people have had to witness, numerous games upon numerous games and the killing of all these people and the sacrifice of all these people. So even though they're quite controlled by the government, there's a level that they have to, that they're not going to, and she even says, what can be, in one of her songs, it's what can be taken away from her and what can, or what's worth taking and what's not. And there's that joy in that community, even though they're struggling and people don't have money, they all come together and they can have this joy and expression. And then you see in the Capitol, where we have more money and more wealth, you don't see joy or freedom or expression. Everybody's treated as one of many and as a number, and you're all equally the same, So I just wanted to express that definitely in the color of the clothing and, showing the difference between the lightness and the darkness of both those worlds.
Right. There's like a relatability and an authenticity to these different characters, I would say. Um, I fell in love with the Academy uniforms. They were so cool. I love them mostly because of the red color. That was going to be one of my big questions. I love the red. They were sophisticated and still scholarly, but they also have that Panem flair, and I love the neutrality of them. So talk to me about these uniforms that really, you wouldn't think that the school uniforms would be the piece that everyone's going to be talking about, but I love the uniforms. If this is what they actually look like in California, I would have been all about them. So
Oh, that makes me really, really happy. I mean, with the uniforms, I wanted it to be, there's certain things I like to do as I like to find classic pieces and elevate them in a way that fits for whatever the project is that I'm working for. And there's so many there's a couple films in the past that are known for their school uniforms, and that's the main look of the film. So there are challenges of coming up with something that is interesting in a school uniform but isn't distracting. And like saying again with the red, we chose that throughout all of the Capitol, for the buildings and all the workings of the Capitol, there were certain key colors we would use. So it would be reds, grays, black, white, and a blue. And so I tried to keep every working hired hand in the Capitol and people, we tried to stay contained in that color palette. So with the students, I wanted it to be just an androgynous, gender neutral kind of look where it wasn't girls in skirts and boys in pants, or you got to choose your own articles you wanted to wear, because in the Capitol, if you're one, you're the same, and so they don't ever let you feel elevated to be special, to rise up. It's keeping everyone contained, even though you may get certain special treatments. It's governmental. It's keeping you contained, and no one can rise above. And so with the students, I love the idea of the kilt, because I think the kilt is a very old article of clothing that we still use in contemporary times, and we've seen it every decade in some way or another. So I really wanted to use a kilt and modernize it in a way of just being a front and a back panel for the school uniform instead of being a complete skirt all the way around. And then doing the red, like I said, because I love the idea of these stark environments with this sea of red that you see all the kids coming in, and especially when they're watching the games and you're looking back at them and it's this sea of red. It's a bit of, blood, it's dread, it's, it represents a lot of things. And, just keeping the shirts gray, again, no collars, just keeping it very simple and clean. But then also we made all the buttons as Academy buttons. So we cast all the buttons, so they have the Academy symbol on them. Oh, but wow. Yeah, I was really, there was definitely a struggle with these uniforms and the mass amount that we had to make.
Oh yeah, I could. During the games, there was oceans of them.
Oh my gosh. And procuring enough fabric, because you're talking about, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of yards of fabric to make them. And we had so many students. And so you have to make an excess amount of uniforms so you can do all the fittings. And then you have to have extra, because we shot so many days. So it was a lot. Besides all all the mentors are in it and they all have doubles of their uniforms. So it was a lot of red fabric.
Is there any red fabric left in the world?
What's hard though is all one type of fabric. It was this wool blend that we got, and then just making sure the dye lots all match, because a lot of times when you get fabric, one bolt, they're supposed to all be the same color, but a dye lot can be different each time. So it was really tricky.
Right. Man, that sounds so difficult. I want to dive into now some of the main characters of the story. Each of them had very specific styles. The main character is, of course, story revolves around Coriolanus Snow, played by Tom Blyth. And I was just immediately infatuated with Snow, because especially that tailored shirt that Tigris makes for him in the beginning. It's just immediately you're like, I know I'm not supposed to like this guy eventually, but I know he's a snappy dresser, and I'm kind of into it. So talk to me about just designing the main look for Coriolanus when he's not in his uniform.
So in the book, it does reference, and I try to keep certain key points in the book in the film for us where it pertained to costumes. And so in the book, it does say how Tigris is refurbishing the shirt that was his father's shirt. And she has to come up with something great for him to wear to the Academy for this awards ceremony. And how she pops these tiles out of a wall and makes buttons out of them. Wow. So we cast these buttons that are kind of a mosaic tile that are gold, white, and black. And then I handed the samples off to the production designer so that when he was working with his construction crew and art director, how he can incorporate them into the tiles in the wall in the bathroom. And then thinking in my mind of like, okay, the base of the shirt could be this white tone on tone texture of the shirt. And then the things that Tigris would add to it would be these buttons. And then she would make this kind of tuxedo front to the shirt. So by adding fabric there to make it special. So it was trying to make him stand out and look special, but also try and think of like, what reasoning could we have for Tigris to make changes to this shirt? And then, and Tom has really broad shoulders. So I didn't want to put him in a sport coat here because I wanted him to have some movement and to stand out and have a bit of white around him for all these scenes and keep him different than other people, because you figure we have all the other mentors to dress. And in that section, the mentors could all wear their own clothing the day as a celebratory thing for the ceremony, whereas every other time we see them are always in uniforms. So for that, everybody's dressing up in their best clothes, or they bought something.
He's ready
special
to accept some prize money too.
Yes, and so they're all dressed up for this very special occasion. But again, wanting to keep all the mentors in the colors of the Capitol, which is the black, the white, the red, the gray, and blue. And so there's some navies in there too. And so that was Tom's look for that. And then not wanting him to be stuffy in a coat because he wears a coat every day, for the Academy. And then also that's an expense he doesn't have. He doesn't have a proper coat. And then we have his Academy look. He also goes through, fatigues where he's in boot camp and he has the blue fatigues on. And then he becomes a peacekeeper. And so he has, his peacekeeper uniform, which is the dove gray. Right. And then at the very end, we were referencing it as his new man look, because it's when he's come back and he's this new man after experiencing so much life in such a short period of time. And in the books, it says he's in a white suit. And having conversations with Francis, I asked if I could lean into the colors of the Academy and of the Capitol. So if he was trying, because he's trying to sneak around, and I said, if he's trying to sneak around, a white suit's probably not the best thing to sneak around. And so keeping him where he's in the same color tone, but he's elevated and more sophisticated, and he has money now. So he's come back as this new man and keeping him very statuesque and intimidating.
I loved that new man look. It just, you could tell he was the boss. Something had definitely changed in that moment.
and it's also trying to bring in the fabric we used on his waistcoat, and the coats, and the color is also stuff I did with Donald Sutherland and Catching Fire. So trying to have that tie-in of this is where he's going, because I had a reference of what Donald Sutherland's character Snow was like.
Wow, that's incredible. What a great direction you had there. All right, now let's talk about the dress that everyone's been talking about in good ways. Lucy Gray Baird, played by Rachel Zegler. This beautiful dress, which I believe, I started to read a little bit, it's referenced quite a bit in the book as well. So I imagine there was quite a lot of pressure with this specific look, knowing it's going to be featured so prominently and all the fans are probably waiting for it. So tell me about this look, and what kind of materials is that? Like a rainbow mesh? It's so beautiful.
And thank you very much for all that. But yes, there was, pressure in ways, or actually goals to hit. I've said many times, I'm really appreciative of our fan base and how they are dedicated to all these movies and are invested and care and want to see things, and that's really nice. And so, I did want it to be true to off the page when I'm first reading rainbow ruffle dress, it kind of spins in my head a lot of what could that be.
Right.
And so there's things I wanted to happen. I wanted to, again, tie into the Hunger Games, the Catching Fire film that I did, and have some relation between Katniss and Lucy. And so with that, I chose to do like this corset shape that mimics the same corset shape of Katniss's Mockingjay dress, the blue dress where she spins and the wings come out. So I wanted to keep that corset shape. And then within that, using a lot of color to help mimic rainbow, using a lot of color in the corset. And you could see there's hand-painted snakes that go around the chest and down around the waist and to the back. There's yellow snakes and green snakes. And then on the front is the flowers that are Katniss flowers and primrose flowers. So tying that into, Katniss and her sister Primrose in the film.
Wow.
And then, so for the tulle skirt, it was figuring out what could I do that showed a rainbow that would also work functionally, because she has to do so many stunts and action and crawling around. And she's in this dress for a very, very, very long time. She's in this costume for a very long time.
I was shocked that she wore it so long. I kept thinking about you, actually. I was like, there's probably 200 of these dresses.
I wish we could have had the time and money to make 200 of that dress. But we had between 8 and 10, depending on like the ones for the stunt, the ones for her, the layers of the skirt, because the skirt is actually 3 layers underneath. And then I made her little like long petticoat, like bloomers underneath, so that she could just run around freely and have action and not worry about her skirt really coming up on camera. And also so we could hide pads as well for when she had to do a lot of things. So the skirt is a pot de sprit is the base layer of the top skirt. There's two layers also underneath that pot de sprit. But on the top layer, it's tulle, and it's actually hand cut ruffles and sheared. It's hand cut and sheared ruffles of tulle, and we luckily, it was looking for fabrics that we could use that had a bit of stretch and give to it because of all the action she would have to do, so it wouldn't just tear every time.
Right.
And so that helped us with that top layer and with the tulle, and then we rigged it where each piece was separate and snapped together, so that if she did rip some of the top skirt, we could switch it out, or we also had pre-made strips of each color of the tulle handy in case one ripped off, we could stitch it back on. But yeah, it was definitely a project of love. Part of it was made in Los Angeles at Western Costume, and part of it was made in Berlin. Wow. The corset and all the hand painting was done in Berlin with my team there. And yeah, I mean, I'm really, really happy with how it turned out. I thought it looked really beautiful. It looked amazing on Rachel. She was very happy. And even like with the peasant top, like the top is a whole, separate piece that's a bodysuit. And so it's just to below her breasts of that blouse. And then the rest was a bodysuit, lightweight, so that it would stay down and stay together. So it was definitely, and there's hand smocking around the wrist that you kind of can't see, but that are in rainbow colors. And then doing the granny boots, because I feel that's a timeless shoe. And it also supported her ankles so she could run around. It leaned into my ideas of like that she's a vaudeville entertainer, a musician, a can girl. So it worked really well that way.
I love that. It worked out so perfectly. And again, it was so impressive that, it was able to sustain so long in the film too. You don't really see that too often.
Yeah.
I'm really excited to talk about this next character, Dr. Gaul, played by Viola Davis. And I have to say, you probably won't guess it, but my favorite costume of the entire film was actually her lab coat. It is so sick. The gradient of the blood red going into the gloves. Every time you came up on screen, I was just so excited to see it again. So tell me about working with Viola Davis and these costumes, where this is really where you kind of saw the Hunger Games of it all, I would say, is in this character in particular.
Yeah, and it was that thing of where I knew she was someone that I could make a bit more progressive because of her exposure to the world, her being a scientist, and, it's like the cultivation of progression. So with her in this lab again, like this is a location. This lab is a location, and then then the set deck is all these amazing shelving and creatures and the lighting. There were these lights that came down above the columns, above these skylights. So it really lit and was beautiful, and all the creatures they brought in were great. But so I wanted to again do red there because of the color of the academy. And also as intimidation as it is, it looks like
very scary.
The saturation of blood. And I knew she was going to have this scene where she's sewing up Tom's shoulder. And I love the idea of the red gloves, the latex gloves against that. So again, it was this, Frances kept referencing her as like, Gene Wilder in Willy Wonka, the original Willy Wonka. And then for me, I leaned into
that makes sense, actually. I don't know
right?
how.
Yeah, and I'm like, and then I leaned into like it's a mad scientist and it's a bit of Dr. Frankenstein because there's that serious level as well, but she's also quite playful. So she was just really brilliant to dress because she does let you do anything, and she is this blank slate that comes in, and as you're working with her, she just starts transforming into this character, and the voice slightly changes, and she has, these little hand gestures and this giggle. And,
that's so accurate.
she's really, really, she was just a joy to work with and looked phenomenal and took this on. And she had just come off of doing The Woman King and press for that.
Wow.
So I tried to make her look older and larger than what she actually is. So her makeup artist her makeup and hair team are phenomenal, and they made this incredible, beautiful wig and did like some scarification on her face and did this kind of milky eye, and it was all in reference to mishaps in her laboratory that could have happened, or creatures that kind of went wrong. And so it was just, I really love her character and how much presence she commands, and how afraid everyone is of her.
I was afraid of her. I loved her, but I still was nervous every time she came on screen. I think it had to do with the gloves too. I don't know why, but it just felt like she was constantly like dripping in blood.
Great.
Like I don't want her to touch me, but but don't go anywhere.
She's always also encouraging, but then terrifying.
right. I want to be her friend, not her enemy, for sure. I want to fit in talking about Tigris because we know Tigris from the former films, and I mean, this must have been a costume designer's dream, knowing that you're going to be having a character who's basically known as the stylist of Panem. But yet Tigris still, was very concerned about everything that was happening, and I kind of felt like her costumes are almost like her armor in a way, where that's how she expresses herself, but still holds a lot of concern for her family at this time. So tell me about Tigris, especially that look that she wore to the games. It was such a beautiful look. That silhouette is crazy.
Thank you. So with Tigris, having that character to dress is great. And then when it's, casting as Hunter Schafer, you get the double win-win.
Perfect casting.
Yes. Like you're like, could there be another Tigris?
No.
So that was really a joy. And she's so lovely, and everything she put on, I mean, we could have dressed her endlessly. Like every single thing we put on was like, maybe how could we work in another costume, so with her costume, there's Lily Ann, the designer, was a fashion designer, really prominent in the 40s. And so kind of going with some of those silhouettes where it was the extreme peplum and the strong shoulder and a very narrow skirt. And so staying true to like that 40s kind of feel, but then leaning into, like a 40s or 50s Balenciaga shoulder and bringing that out. And so just having her reign a bit of in the capital, but still having it be authentic to, a 40s and 50s kind of inspiration. And so with this piece, what I wanted to do was sewing the seams on the outside so that it looks a bit frayed. So it looks, she's maintaining it. She's repurposing pieces because she is talented and is a designer in her own right, that she's able to keep the family looking presentable out to the world where they're really struggling inside. So with her clothes, I always had a little bit of fraying on them, or like with this, as you're seeing in the illustration and in the portrait, it's the discoloration. So it looks like it's also faded. So we airbrushed all the edges and airbrushed a darker fuchsia tone along the seams.
Wow.
And it was really great too, because the patina team, Jan, who headed up the patina team, I bring him, and we have two. So I bring him one,
Right.
and I'm telling him, I really want you to just airbrush all these seams. And his face kind of went, okay.
Are you sure?
And then joked, and I said, like, don't screw it up,
No pressure.
So it was a very subtle process, and he did such a beautiful, beautiful job on it. He and his team were just lovely and amazing. So yeah, so that's kind of her, and trying to keep her in the colors of like these happier tones, because she is trying to remain hopeful, and she's always optimistic, and she is terrified of what's happening in the world. And like you said, her clothing is her armor. It's the way she can protect herself and then present something that's not really happening internally for her, and wanting to be the role model and, the arm of the family that is keeping the prestige of the name. So yeah, so her costumes were really important.
It just came out. It was worth the wait. I was very excited to see Tigris.
I have to say, my only regrets, and it's jokes I always have with Frances, like the hospital scene that she's in. I'm like, can't Tigris walk into the hospital? Not just sitting and shooting
please.
because that costume also was beautiful. It was like these really big fuchsia crepe palazzo pants that we made, and this beautiful top with the strong shoulders and the rosettes at the neck. So yeah,
I felt like a little kid in the theater. I was like, okay, Tigris is coming up. What's she gonna be wearing? I'm so excited. Well, Trish, I'm so excited to see you. It was such a great film. And just for my final question, looking back on it all, what did this project mean to you and your crew to do for the world to see this now? All the fans finally get to see this incredible film.
I mean, it's really big. It was a really, really big film as far as for, amount of costumes and people we had in it. Also, it's really, we shot in Poland and in Germany, in various areas of Germany, and it's a really, really big film for them. So that's also really
that's great.
And they had a cast and crew, not cast, but they had a crew screening, and to get feedback from that and how excited they all were to finally get to see it, because, we shot this a year ago. So I think all that's been really nice and really rewarding to hear all the positive, especially from the crew, and finally getting to see, because as you go along, a lot of times they don't get to see all the hard work they've put in. And I'm really excited for the audience and to get feedback on what that is, because it is so vastly different from the other films. And I think it's a nice, refreshing change of, where it's going, what it looks like, and what more could come from this, So I'm really excited to see what people think. And as a little teaser, we're working on a very small collaboration of a very street wearable merchandise and a little bit of jewelry that we're doing as an inspiration and nod to the film. So it'll be nice to see what the fans think of that too.
Ooh, okay. I'm excited. A little drop there. Well, I'm excited for everyone to see it. Even if you if you know what you're walking into, I just have to say you're so wrong.
Know.
Yeah, this film is so different in such a great way.
You know, but you don't know. There's some twists and turns.
Yeah. Costume designer Trish Summerville, thank you so much for joining me. I'm so glad I finally got to talk to you.
Oh, thank you so much. It's so nice to see you again, even if it's just via Zoom and virtually.
Yeah, well, we got to hang out and get coffee soon.
Yeah, and congratulations to you on this. It's a great podcast.
Thank you. Thank you.
You've had some great guests that I've listened to.
Well, now you're one of them, so I'm very excited.
Hi, this is Dan, audio engineer of the podcast, here to let you know that if you wanted to support the show, you can head over to theartofcostume.com/podstore. There you can buy some awesome TeePublic merch with the podcast logo, such as a shirt, coffee mug, stickers, and of course, a baby onesie. Thanks for all your support.
Okay, everyone, welcome back from break. Lexi, that was an interview.
I loved it. I learned so much about like all of the little details that I never would have noticed about those costumes. So that's really, really fun.
Trish is just so cool. And, you know, I hear it's this thing where like she killed it so hard in Catching Fire. What's she going to do now? And I just think that this was such a treat. I was obsessed with the Academy uniforms, those red with the kill. I need that. I need that in my closet.
No, the way I would quite literally wear that is insane. But no, it was such a good costume. I also love for like the premiere, they had like some of the people wearing those costumes. Did you see that? And they were like for the premiere, but they were wearing the costumes. Like, that's so cool.
So cool. I need that, but in black though, of course. But,
right. Red would be crazy for you.
Red would freak people out.
Something would be terribly wrong if I saw Spencer wearing a red full as Academy outfit. That would be crazy.
But then also like the Lucy Gray Baird costume, that one, I can imagine how nerve-wracking it would have been to do that costume because, you know, I mean, the fandom is very serious about this sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I think she translated it from the book so well. Doing that skirt out of mesh, that feels close to impossible.
No, it was such a good, and I loved the details what she was talking about, how like the corsetry had like the snakes on it, but then it had the primroses and the Katniss on it, right? And I was like,
yeah,
like that's so much. I first of all never would have known that, but
right.
That's just such like attention to detail and just incredible. And you guys mentioned, but it was really important, like in the books, like that this dress had like an impact on how the Capitol saw Lucy Gray Baird. So I think it was totally represented well in the movies.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even know Katniss and Primrose was a flower, so I would never have got it.
Okay, so did you watch the movies? Because Peeta plants the primrose. Remember in the last one?
I have a dark spot in my memory every time Peeta was on screen, so no.
What? We are going to fight over that.
I'm not a Peeta fan.
Are you a Gale fan?
I was a neither fan.
Okay.
I was
gonna say
I was
Gale is
fully on team Effie Trinket in every film.
And that's valid, as you should. But I do think that the primrose is a dead giveaway considering Rose is in it, but that's okay. I'll let you have it.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't ask you to be on this episode to make me look dumb on my own podcast.
Well, you should have known what you were getting yourself into.
All right, Lexi, this is the moment you've been waiting for. We have to talk about Coriolanus. I'll start by saying that his costumes were sick. That white tailored shirt at the beginning, honestly, is one of the coolest shirts I've ever seen. And now I will give you the floor to say whatever it is you've been waiting to say for the past 24 hours.
They were not supposed to make President Snow attractive. How are you not supposed to like him? I was looking at, there was a TikTok and it was like some of the reviews from this movie. And they were like, how can you, like, he can't be a bad guy if he's good looking. And I was like, Max, like, come on, why'd they do that? But no, I loved this. I didn't realize that like he didn't have a jacket. That's why listening to the podcast was so interesting, because it's like I was kind of wondering because he's wearing this, you know, shirt and this vest, and it looks like he should have like some sort of suit jacket with it. But since they were saying like he didn't have like the money for it, like having a jacket like that wasn't something that they could have. So that's so like interesting, like the attention to detail. But I also, this is like this specific shirt was talked about in the book and how Tigris like made it. And I think what's his Peter Dinklage, but what's his character's name? Whatever. He makes a comment about how like it smells like potatoes or something like that. And it was because like Tigris used what they had to make the shirt. So I think it was really like just interesting to see that kind of come to life. And I think what's really interesting is like they're so poor that they can't afford food. But that's why, I mean, costume design in any movie is so important. But that's why I feel like it was so specifically important in here, because even though they didn't have money to afford food, they're still wearing these like amazing outfits. And I think it's because, you know, they're trying to still have like the effect that they are rich, even though they're not. And they're trying to kind of cover up the fact that they're poor. The costume design is just so like interesting because they're working with what they got, but like they still manage to like look this amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like do or die for them. If they don't, if they don't succeed in what Snow's trying to do with these games, that's why Tigris is so team Snow, doing her best to just make him look the best he can, and she succeeds. And also, Snow has hair goals, by the way. I just want, when he, at the very end of the film, when he's walking up to the fountain with that short hair, I was like, oh, almost took that to Supercuts with me on my phone.
Don't get me started. So get me started. The way he pulled off all of the different hair colors or haircuts too, and like
the short one too, the buzz.
That was another one of the comments. They were like, moral of the story, never trust a guy in his buzz cut era. I thought that was so funny. But now,
okay, quick. Harry Styles buzz cut, yay or nay?
Okay, listen, he looks great no matter what, but his curls were iconic, and I'm sad. But Anne, his mother, made an Instagram post essentially like mothering us, being like, do not hate on my son. And it was the best. It literally, like, go look at it. It was the best Instagram post I've ever seen. I was like, that's exactly what my mother would do if I was getting hate. And she was like, I
feel like I should time your Harry Styles responses. You get 30 seconds.
Okay, I'm done.
No.
If you don't want me to talk about it.
Yeah, but in his buzz cut era, I get what you're saying, but he looked good. I almost wanted to shave my head after too. One of my favorite characters though was Viola Davis as Gaul. I mean, that red costume with the gloves, it's just like, stop it. I'm obsessed with it. So every time she was on screen, I could feel myself like losing my breath.
Yeah, I sat really close on to the screen, and it was IMAX, so it was huge. So
you got the close-up details.
I got a close-up of everyone, but I was looking, like, every time Viola came on screen, I was looking so closely at like the details. Her makeup was insane. Like, I just loved looking at it. But those gloves were terrifying. Like,
yeah.
I thought they were like actually her skin for a second, and I was like, what is going on? Mm-hmm. I thought that the gloves were so cool. But no, her costumes were incredible. And this, like, I guess it's her lab coat. That's a very slay lab coat.
Yeah, this is her work uniform.
Yeah. I've never seen like a lab coat like that before, but it literally looks like it's like blood rained down on her, which is terrifying, but like
I love it. Yeah. Okay. And then Trish said like she was preparing for that part where she was gonna be sewing up Snow's back, and just like with the bloody glove. I mean, yeah, the storytelling, everyone involved in this film deserves a very healthy high five, because it is so good with the production and the sets, and it's just all worked so beautifully. I'm very, very happy with how this film came out. It could have went very wrong after all these years, and it went very right.
I think that it's hard when there's like so much hype around something, and like there's a long time in between stuff. Like, you're just so excited, but I was definitely not let down.
Yeah. And then we have to end with talking about Tigris.
This is your time to shine.
I just have such a crush on Hunter. I'm obsessed with her. She's so beautiful. And the way that she could wear clothes too is just, it's toxic. It's so good. It's just the way Trish designed, especially that one look she wore to the games with the shoulder pads and just that silhouette. It is, I mean, there should be a museum for all of Hunter's looks in this film. And then she's taking the show on the road for all this press, and also just working with her stylist to look incredibly amazing in everything she does. I'm obsessed with Hunter Schafer, and I cannot think of a better person to play Tigris. Perfect. And also, Hollywood, if you're listening, I know you're getting ready to cast for that Legend of Zelda movie. You're looking at the only choice for Zelda, and I will fight anyone who wants to step to me about that.
No, she was perfectly casted. I do, because in the interview you guys were talking about how like in the hospital Tigris was sitting and how she was actually wearing something phenomenal. Like I'm like, I want to see all of the
Right.
because I'm like, that's like she's a stylist. Like, she's gonna be serving.
Yeah, she just got like you're so right. She had like a couple seconds where she just walked in and we were all like, what is she wearing?
What is
And
she
it
wearing? It's like when people show up for the Met Gala and you're trying to figure it out, like who is it? What are they wearing? It's like this was my Met Gala.
I saw someone say on one of the social media apps that they should do like another prequel movie that's just about Tigris, and that would be so cool if they do like a Cruella type prequel movie about Tigris. That would be sick.
So cool. That, and then because that's been a big question of like how this Tigris became the Tigris that we know in the original movies. People were also talking about doing like a Finnick and Haymitch movie, which I would die for.
Yeah, I had a feeling you're gonna say that.
Die for.
I wonder why.
I wonder why
too. Yeah, that'd be so fun. And Hunter and Trish have to come back for that. Yeah. And with that, Lexi, as you remember, we like to play a little game here. Are you ready to play one costume to rule them all?
There's so many good things, but yeah.
Okay, hit the music, Daniel.
The one costume to rule them all.
Okay, Lexi, I think I'll go first to give you a little bit more time. As I said in an interview with Trish, my favorite costume was, of course, the red lab coat that Dr. Gaul wears. The bloody ombre one with the red latex gloves. It was just breathtaking. Every time I saw it, I just thought you never see anything like this. You think like with a lab coat, she'd just be wearing like a white trench coat type thing and maybe like some blue gloves. But no, of course not at the Capitol. And I just feel like something so simple was so beautiful. That ombre is just so good. And the gloves, I mean, this whole costume is just so sick. And I think Trish and her team killed it with this costume. I think, though, my second runner-up, though, has to be Tigris's pink Hunger Games look. I mean, that one was so cool. I like the Gray Baird costume, but I just feel like, I don't know. I just love all of them. This is a hard one to pick a costume.
It's so hard. Yeah, no, it's so hard. I am going to go with a basic answer and then say the Lucy Gray Baird just because I loved it already. Like in general, I feel like the cubby, like I feel like I would, if I were to be in the Hunger Games, I would be in the cubby because that fashion is like my style.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's why.
That's so true, actually.
It's so true. Everything they wear, I was like, wait a minute, that's giving me some inspo. But I loved it in general. And then I listened to the podcast and I heard those little details. And that's one of my favorite things about movies and stuff is like the Easter eggs. Mm-hmm. So I wait, just kidding. I'm not going to say that because it's in the movie. But the fact that the dress had like the primroses and the Katniss detail like killed me. So learning about all of that was just really interesting. But I think in general too, when reading the books, I feel like that dress has like a really big impact. So I was most excited to see how it would become. And I was not disappointed in the slightest.
Yeah, the way that she was able to translate that from the pages is just really incredible to me.
Oh, good. It's like also not, because when I hear rainbow, I was thinking like a little something not necessarily quite as beautiful as she ended up making it.
Yeah, rainbow could go tacky really fast. Really
fast. And so I was like, this is it reminds me because Peeta makes the line where he's like, oh, orange, and she's like Effie's hair is, they're talking about their favorite colors, and he's like, mine's orange, and Katniss goes, it's like Effie's hair, and he's like, no, like the sunset. Her dress is like the sunset, like it's like it's beautiful. So that one's my winner.
That's such a good one. And then like Trish said, they had to make like just so much ruffle just in case it ripped or anything so they could quickly. My friend Natalie Lucia, who's been on the podcast, she actually did a recreation of this exact dress, and she was texting me throughout the whole thing like, this mesh is gonna kill me. Literally. I just feel, oh man, such a crazy dress. And while we're still on the subject, I have a picture up for Lexi. The look that we see Lucy Gray Baird wear I think that's back in the districts toward the end with the purple skirt. That was a very Lexi look.
Tell me I
if you
wouldn't
were in
wear
the
it.
cubby.
I
Yeah.
would wear it in a second. Any of the cubby looks, I was dying. I was like, that is so me. But I was because I was watching it and I was interested about the shoes. Because I was like,
Yeah.
like I'd be wearing sneakers. Like, I don't know. But obviously, like they were on their press tour or whatever. And she was saying that Lucy Gray Baird is a performer forced to like fight, and Katniss is a fighter forced to perform.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's like relevant, is like, you know, she's wearing her cute little performing covey outfit, but like you and Trish were talking about how like they're good shoes, they support her ankle, she can run around, and I didn't really think about that, so it was interesting to hear that aspect of it too.
Yeah, so fun. Well, that is it for Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Thank you to costume designer Trish Summerville for joining. And thank you, Lexi, for being here. I'm so glad I got to see you.
Oh my God, of course. I'll come back anytime.
I know. You got to tell me what movies or shows I'm not allowed to not have you on a podcast for, because she's been very upset about Hamilton. But you're here to literally the next week.
Listen, if there's one thing about me, it's that I know all of Hamilton. I can't believe I wasn't even a thought. It's fine. I'll just cry about it later. No, I'm kidding.
I'm
at
sorry.
least happy I was here
sorry.
for this. Thank you for having me on. This was so fun.
Of course. And if you all felt the same way, if you want to tell us what your one costume ruled them all was from Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, don't forget our voicemail is 626-515-1826. Remember, we don't answer the phone, so don't be scared. No one's going to pick up. So you can also send us an email at theartofcostume@gmail.com. And of course, follow us on Instagram at theartofcostumepod, TikTok at theartofcostume. Our merch store is open if you go to artofcostume.com/podstore. And never forget to leave us a 5-star text review on Apple Podcasts, because that really does help. And Lexi, where can everyone follow you on all of your global travels?
Yeah, my Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube are all at Lexi Silverstein, like my name. That's Lexy, silver like the color, Stein. And my blog is Alexified.com. That's ELEXYFY.com. Thank you.
And what about your podcast?
Oh, my podcast, I forgot. You can literally listen to my podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. It is Alexified, the place for fashion.
Oh, amazing. And there's a great episode with me on it if you travel back into the archives.
Totally go listen to it, guys.
Which I accidentally saw on YouTube the other day. It was a jump scare.
Right. It will be there too.
I was like, oops, is that me? Well, thank you all for listening. And don't forget to join us next week, because we only have 3 episodes left this year. So we're getting into our holiday season with the most Christmas movie I could think of. Everyone's gonna eye roll. Edward Scissorhands. It's a holiday movie. So next week, Elizabeth will be back and we'll be discussing the costumes of Edward Scissorhands, designed by the one, the only Colleen Atwood. So get ready for that. Only 3 episodes left. Thank you all so much for joining, and may the odds be ever in your favor.
I love that. That was such a good ending.
The Art of Costume podcast is hosted and produced by Elizabeth Joy Glass and Spencer Williams. Our audio engineering and editing is done by Dan White. Follow us on TikTok at The Art of Costume and Instagram at The Art of Costume Pod. If you want to support the show, go to theartofcostume.com/podstore. For more podcast updates, costume reviews, deep dives, and interviews, go to theartofcostume.com, a blog dedicated to highlighting the best in costume design.